Danzel reaching tier 5, we don't know the process behind it, but we do know that there are multiple people that are already there, and he himself has a unique way to actually get there, and a unique way to essentially stay on that path. And a good example would be the fire mage, or the magus, the maiden, the feathers, we only see the third feather, the mercenary, guild owner, and the two devils. Technically, it was a summon with a hydra and dragon and all those other parts, but that was simply the description of what they are. If I had to give Danzel a in between, he would be a magical knight, I guess you could say. But he's also a craftsman, so he'd be a little bit closer to the mercenary guild owner. Some of the advantages that he has that none of the others have is that he is undead. There's no question about that. He starts the series off as an undead. He also starts the series off with Sin of Wrath. Although nowadays he doesn't really use it because he simply loses control. With Undead Limitless Stamina, there is quite a large chance, and there has been large chances, of him simply losing his mind or losing his control over his body, and he makes situations worse. Oftentimes, this doesn't progress more than just that, but it has saved him a couple of times. And we do know he is also a fast learner. He is very fast on the uptake when it comes to numbers, against, especially if it's like close in numbers to him. Even in the beginning, fighting 4, 15, almost 50 goblins, day 1, he is about, he's pretty on that. When it comes down, he's not gonna go down easy. Even with subpar weapons and gear, or outnumbered, we do see that situations like him do happen. Danzel is, I believe, now almost 5 years old, so Danzel could potentially become tier 5 at 6 or even 7. If it gets crazy enough, it could be a tier 5 at age 5, which I don't think would, I think basically everybody would be very mad about that. But there have been stories about situations such as these, even very insignificant things like lizards turning into something that is far more dangerous. In this case, Danzel, like his master said, is an anomaly. We see the many classes he had beforehand, and the choices that he had. There is a potential that he could make all these classes come into being using his runesmith powers, in which the armors will simply stand up by themselves and fight for him. I think one of the greatest things that he has is his endless amounts of training that he has uh, he can use to simply increase himself in whatever stat he needs. He learns very dangerous abilities very quickly, very easily, even in the beginning. It doesn't take him a very long time to actually get that experience. And the experience for somebody who has limitless stamina and essentially hundreds of years without, if he doesn't ever run into anything bad, bigger and badder, he has quite a bit of training to do. And he can get a lot done. At tier 4 right now, he actually does have the ability to increase the amount of zombies or whatever they're called at tier 2 to not specific classes, but he has a lot of them, which can and does often become a big part of why he holds people back and holds his position. He seems to very quickly and very simply get skills, and he has lots of options in which he simply uses swords, but he can use other things. If he does the same thing that he did with Nevin, he could potentially have limitless magical powers, limitless runes that he can make himself, limitless summons and creations, and he has limitless, or close to limitless, amounts of tools that he can use against other people. So if no one actually cracks his skull, and a couple of times since he can come back, they would essentially, over time, year after year, continuously have thousands of tier 2s, tier 3s, and possibly even tier 4s constantly attack them. The difference between a tier 4 and tier 5 seems to be around a few, I want to say around 6 or so tier 4s, but in one person. We do know that the devil was beaten back by the Death Skulls, but they did lose a member. That was in the 210 to 211 chapters. Even in tier 3, there are multiple classes that and abilities that he has that chance to give to other summons. He, of course, will have even more choices at tier 5. One of the biggest and worst things that could happen between an undead that is not only has limitless, can use limitless numbers, can use limitless objects, and he has a very deep pool of knowledge to use. It would simply be a matter of time until multiple tier 5s are the only things that would stand in the way of him taking over the continents. And that might fall as well. Whether or not Danzel would actually do something like that is up in the air, as he seems to be more of a leave me alone kind of character. If you want to think about it in a different way, he could also collapse an economy. Not necessarily because he can kill everybody there, but he will simply sell too many high-grade items and simply collapse whatever sell or whatever auction is out there. That's one of the best things about being a runesmith. That's why the runesmith family originally were so uptight. They had multiple tier 4s, keeping them safe, because they essentially could, with one or two decisions that they, if they ever chose to, could simply collapse economies, or even make armies nigh invincible, and that alone would do what they need. Here's some more tier 3s that happen. I do wonder if Danzel ever does get to tier 5, and he does do all this stuff that I'm saying, that he maxes out, meta maxes, will he essentially have an army of tier 4s with the ability to rival the strongest kingdom? He will simply just birth superior undeads at his level while he is in the tier 5? And how many will that be? Thousands? Hundreds of thousands? An endless amount? Danzel seems to be a tier 4 that is able to fight mages even while they are far away, like he did with Nevin. And he's very good at increasing his own fighting capability, like he did with the Death Skulls. There's also a limitless potential that Danzel has. He could potentially get to the point where he has multiple clones of himself that can constantly regenerate, or even constantly reincarnate, or they'd have something closer to what Sir Dan has, and maybe a combination of Vanessa and the mages. They would be throwing out chaos. They would be slashing people with chaos. And then they would be moving potentially at the same speed as people teleport. At the speed of light. If that happens, he would be quite the person to do in crossverse. It's going to take about a millennia or so for the author to get to tier 5 Danzel. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching.